Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit
You
that
know what's
subscribe
wild?
button
The
right
Toronto Blue Jays just handed one of their former top prospects to their biggest rivals on a silver platter, and nobody even noticed until days later. Welcome back to the channel where we break down the moves that actually matter in baseball. And trust me, this one's going to sting for Blue Jays fans. So here's what happened. Adam Kloffenstein, a guy the Blue Jays were so desperate to sign that they threw $2.45 million at him straight out of high school back in 2018, just signed a minor league deal with the New York Yankees. Yeah, you heard that right. The Yankees. Their division rivals, the team they see 19 times a season. And get this, the signing happened on December 19th. But it flew so far under the radar that it didn't even show up on his transaction page until Sunday. No press release, no announcement, nothing. Just a quiet little transaction that could end up haunting Toronto for years. Let me take you back to 2018 for a second, because the context here is absolutely crucial. The Blue Jays were in rough shape. They'd been stuck near the bottom of the AL East for what felt like forever, couldn't win consistently, and were desperately trying to rebuild through the draft. That's when they spotted Kloffenstein, this massive 6'5", 245-pound right-hander throwing absolute gas at Magnolia High School in Texas. This kid had already committed to pitch at TCU, one of the premier college baseball programs in the country. But Toronto wanted him badly enough that they were willing to pay nearly 4 times his slot value to get him. The 88th pick in the draft typically gets around $652,900. The Blue Jays gave him $245 million. That's not just going over slot, that's obliterating it. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Blue Jays had taken Kloffenstein's high school teammate and friend, Jordan Groshans, in the first round that same year. Groshans was supposed to get $4.2 million based on his slot, but he signed for $3.4 million, taking $800,000 less than he could have. Why? Because the Blue Jays needed that pool money to sign Kloffenstein. These two Texas high school kids basically orchestrated their signings together so they could both play professional baseball for Toronto. Kloffenstein even said it himself at the time. If Groshans hadn't taken less money, the Blue Jays wouldn't have gotten him. That's how interconnected these signings were. So after Toronto invested all that money and made all those calculations to land Kloffenstein, you'd think he'd pan out, right? Well, at first it looked brilliant. In 2019, his first full season in Single-A with the Vancouver Canadians, the guy was dealing. He posted a 2.24 ERA, struck out 64 batters in just over 64 innings, and looked every bit like a future major league starter. The Blue Jays prospect evaluators were practically drooling over him. He rocketed up their internal rankings, landing at number 8 on their MLB pipeline prospect list. He stayed in the top 10 through 2020, even though nobody played that year because of the pandemic, and into 2021. Everything was trending in the right direction. But then things started to fall apart. Injuries became a recurring theme. Development stalled. The strikeouts that came so easily in Single-A became harder to get as he moved up the ladder. His command, which was always going to be a work in progress for a guy his size, never really tightened up the way Toronto hoped it would. By the time 2024 rolled around, Kloffenstein had thrown exactly 1 inning in the major leagues. 1 single inning. For a guy who was once a top 10 prospect in a competitive organization, that's devastating. The Blue Jays clearly lost patience, and honestly, you can't totally blame them. 7 years is a long time to wait for a return on a $245 million investment, especially when you're trying to win now. But here's where this gets really spicy. Instead of just releasing him or letting him fade into obscurity, Kloffenstein lands with the Yankees, the New York freaking Yankees, the team that's won more World Series titles than any other franchise in history, the team with one of the best player development systems in baseball, the team that seems to have a knack for taking other organizations' cast-offs and turning them into productive major leaguers. Remember how they turned Clay Holmes from a mediocre Pirates reliever into one of the most dominant closers in baseball? Or how about Nestor Cortes, who was basically an afterthought before he became an all-star in pinstripes? The Yankees know how to fix pitchers, and now they've got their hands on a guy who still has the physical tools that made him a top prospect in the first place. Kloffenstein's only 25 years old. In baseball years, especially for pitchers, that's still incredibly young. He's got the size, he's got the arm strength, and presumably he's got the work ethic that got him drafted in the first place. What he needs is the right coaching, the right development plan, and maybe just a fresh start away from an organization that might have given up on him too soon. And that's exactly what the Yankees specialize in providing. Think about this from Toronto's perspective for a minute. You're trying to compete for a division title. You're trying to get back to the World Series after coming so close. And now you've got to face a guy in your own division who you invested heavily in, who knows your organization inside and out, and who's now working with a team that's historically been better at developing pitching than you have. If Kloffenstein figures it out and becomes even a decent middle reliever for the Yankees, that's a brutal look for the Blue Jays. If he becomes something more, if he turns into a legitimate rotation piece or a high-leverage bullpen arm, this could go down as one of the more embarrassing prospect management failures in recent Blue Jays history. And let's not forget about the money aspect. Toronto could have paid him whatever they wanted to in a minor league deal to keep him in the organization. These contracts are cheap. They could have stashed him in AAA, given him another year to figure things out, kept him away from their rivals. Instead, they let him walk, and the Yankees swooped in immediately. That tells you the Yankees saw something. Their scouts watched him, their analytics department crunched the numbers, and they decided he was worth a roster spot.